Good afternoon, everybody. What an exciting week for community energy it's been already. Right, we'll get more into that in a moment. I'll just get the boring bits out the way first, but welcome everybody to today's Love Wind webinar. Um, yeah, it's great to have you here with us. Just so you all know, we are recording this event. The recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and websites, and we'll make slides and all the transcripts available as part of that too, so you can share it with your colleagues and friends, family, and whoever needs to know more about community wind, as and when. Okay, great. So yeah, thank you everyone who's joined us today for our Love Wind webinar, the community power source that we've all been missing. I'm John Taylor, the head of capacity building at Community Energy England. We're here today to hear from 5 speakers on the topic of community wind. I'll give you an overview of the event. We've got a lot to get through, but we've given it an extra half an hour for this one because we've had such a lot of interest in it and it's such an important kind of area for the sector as well. We'll introduce our speakers as we kind of go through into their talks in a moment. But first, we're going to hear from Alce Parker, Director at Greenstoker, followed by Louise Daniels, who's Head of External Affairs at Thrive Renewables. There will then be a 10-minute Q&A for the first 2 speakers. After that, we'll hear from Dave Green, Development Manager at Sharenergy, David Tudgey, Co-founder and Community and Development Director of Community Power Solutions, and then finally Stefan Haselwimmer, creator of OpenWind.org, um, covering kind of the toolkits available and about how we can kind of find the best places to build new wind projects. This will then be followed by another Q&A for the last 3 speakers, and then we'll wrap things up by launching our Community Energy England Wind Working Group as well. So, before hearing from our speakers, I'll give you a brief introduction to Community Energy England and the Energy Learning Network. Community Energy England was founded in 2014 to act as the voice of the community energy sector, connecting activity across the country and putting people at the heart of the energy transition. We now have grown to over 330 members, mainly community energy organisations, alongside supportive stakeholders and corporate partners and local authorities. Our work focuses on removing barriers, connecting practitioners and stakeholders, and advocating for policies that enable community energy to thrive. And we've seen, a lot of that really come to a head this week. We work with politicians, national, local governments, and network operators to ensure the sector can develop new projects and play an active role in the energy transition. To find out more about our policy work, resources, campaigns, etc., please visit our website. We'll sure be sharing relevant links that we mention in the chat throughout the call as well. Next slide, please. So this event is brought to you through the Energy Learning Network. It's funded by the National Lottery's Climate Action Fund. And yeah, it's a partnership that we have between ourselves. It's a UK-wide initiative along with Community Energy Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and as well as climate charity Ashton and the Centre for Sustainable Energy. It's part of a series we're doing to skill up the sector to take on new projects and grow into new areas. And yeah, how the sector can step up to help decarbonise the grid as well as delivering local benefits. The ELN offers free insights, resources, and connections for both established groups and those new to community energy, along with peer learning and mentoring opportunities as well. Before we bring in our speakers, I just wanted to set the scene of why we're doing this webinar. Next slide, please. And I really couldn't start without mentioning the local power plan. It's here. It's fantastic to see it out in the open. I don't know if you on your Zoom toolbars, if you go to the react bit, there's a little heart-shaped reaction box. So I'd love to see a lot of hearts spammed throughout this session as we go on. Hey, look at that. But yeah, £1 billion has now been pledged to the growth of community and local energy. And yeah, I wanted to send some hearts out to the rest of the team at Community Energy England, particularly our CEO Emma and Duncan and Josh, our policy and advocacy team, who've been working tirelessly for the past 2 years to get this out there, as well as supportive people at the Cooperative Party and obviously Michael Shanks and Ed Miliband for seeing the potential of the sector. So it really has kind of been developed because of everyone within the membership, all the effort you've put in to date. So people have been listening. GB Energy is there to support more of this happening. So brilliant to reach this point. Next slide, please. But yeah, we're here specifically today to love wind for Valentine's Day. We're going to talk about why community wind. First of all, it's the missing piece of the clean power plan. The goal to reach kind of 90% clean power by 2030. When people like Regen and other partners look at all the kind of projects in the queue, solar's doing well, batteries are doing well. But the missing piece of the jigsaw is onshore wind, in England in particular and Wales as well. NESO recently did their queue rejigging. We still see there's a need for about another 5 gigawatts of wind across England and Wales. And then we're doing a bit of research with the DNOs as well to work out spatially where the most wind is needed. For example, UK Power Networks, we know they need at least 200 megawatts in the southeast and East Anglian regions, for example. So next slide, please. And we think the best opportunity to do that is for community to step up and revisit our roots with community wind. Like the community energy sector in England started with wind power. The Bay Wind Energy Co-op up in the northwest, and the work that Energy for All did to get cooperative ownership of the early wind farms. I first heard about community energy from the Bro Duffy community wind turbine in Machynlleth, linked with the Centre for Alternative Technology. So yeah, this is where we started out. We detoured into other technologies, but after a hiatus, I think we're ready to get back into it. Next slide, please. And first of all, yeah, in order to kind of the clean power mission, the politics at the moment, people love community energy. Like research we did with Commonwealth and Power to Change and More in Common, people in general really like private, like renewable energy in general. Like 40% support it when it's a privately owned energy project, but that gets a real boost to 60% positive support when these projects are community owned. So yeah, with things like shared ownership, and we could covering that a bit today, and just sustaining public support for renewable energy. Community energy has so much to offer, like everybody in the system, to make the most of that. So that's why we thought we needed to make an effort to make this our focus this year. Okay, next, please. Right, so I think we're ready to hand over to our speakers, who obviously a lot more experienced myself. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Alice Parker from Greenstoker.
Thanks, John. Well done, Community Energy. What a week it's been, and thank you very much for welcoming me here to talk to you guys today. So my name is Als, and I am Greenstoker. I am passionate about local energy generation that benefits its host communities and addresses the climate and biodiversity and security emergency. I'm based in Devon, and back in 2020, I was one of the founder directors of the Devon Energy Collective, CIC. In Devon, we saw a huge amount of fantastic work going on within Devon's community energy groups, and the opportunity to work in partnership with them, with other communities, local authorities, and ethical investors to deliver renewable energy at scale, whilst keeping the ownership, value, and decision making rooted in Devon. So today I'm talking to you from both Greenstoker and the Devon Energy Collective. Next slide, please. Faith, I can't actually see my slides just to say, so you're going to have to read my mind. That's all right.
Noted.
Thank you. I've been asked to talk about delivering community wind, and I wanted to start off by talking about how its popularity has changed over time. Back in the 80s, the Central Electricity Generating Board led a campaign to explore wind power. I love the advert on the far left of my slide as an alternative to nuclear and coal, and kick-started the wind industry here with Carmarthen Bay Experimental Wind Farm. It's been an uphill slog since then, with wind being viewed as left field, woolly, and intermittent. During the 2000s, I was at PowerGen, now E.ON, developing projects around the UK to vehement local opposition and even to rotten tomatoes. We were told that wind turbines didn't work, that they were noisy and expensive and caused planes to crash. Um, there were so many myths to dispel, and my wind farm, Chiplow in North Norfolk, took 7 years to get planning and 12 to get built in total. Then in 2015, there was a de facto ban resulting in over 50 planning applications being withdrawn. This led to almost 10 years of stalling before the ban was lifted in 2024. Finally, hope is on the horizon. Over the last couple of years, I've led a team at Octopus Energy Generation, delivering 1 megawatt wind schemes and consulting on them locally. And I'm now of the view that wind power has become mainstream. Hooray! People recognise that it plays a crucial role in helping to decarbonise our electricity system. Last year, I attended 4 public consultations and can genuinely report back that people like wind, but they want to see the benefits locally. Um, Next slide. Um, so, uh, the EIA planning process is lengthy and arduous, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of points. Firstly, turbines have a very small footprint. A 1 megawatt EWT machine, for example, might typically have between 13 and 15 meters in radius of concrete foundation, which is up to 3 meters deep. After 25 years of power generation, the foundations can be removed and the land returned back to its previous condition. This means that they should be viewed as temporary when climate change is the single greatest long-term threat to wildlife and landscapes. Secondly, moving on to wildlife, I wanted to highlight that wind deployment should be viewed as an opportunity for biodiversity. Biodiversity net gain requirements can boost new habitats, such as planting wildflower verges on access tracks, bee and bug hotels, and new trees and ponds away from the turbine. When designing a layout, you can microsite turbines to avoid sensitive areas and minimise impacts to birds and bats. There's some interesting mitigation strategies now, including using AI cameras to detect collision risk and shut down turbines. Curtailment doesn't need to lead to huge losses. Bats, for example, restrict their activity to calm, dry nights. Recent research in Norway demonstrates that by painting one blade black, you'll see 72% less collisions. So, we've established that we're in a climate and biodiversity emergency. Security of supply is high on the agenda. Wind is now established and cheap. We are one of the windiest countries in Europe. So, how do we build more wind? Firstly, we need land. Suitable land is surprisingly difficult to find in England. We need large buffers from houses, up to 1 kilometre now for new large machines that people are looking at. They need to be sited away from infrastructure and out of designated land, and we need a willing landowner. One challenge here is that good land for wind turbines is often already earmarked for more valuable development. We also need a grid connection. The recently implemented 5 megawatt transmission impact assessment threshold for much of the UK has made all of the difference for many sub 5 megawatt projects, meaning that if there is distribution grid nearby, so an 11 kV wooden pole, for example, then effective grid connections are often possible with only minor upgrade work. And we need all of the other practicalities to align. So this means windy sites with access away from ecology and heritage and not impacting infrastructure such as aviation, roads, gas and water lines, etc. It is harder than it sounds. Um, so in summary, finding sites in England is not easy. So this is my crusade. I think that, along with our other developments that other panelists might talk about today, we should be building 1 megawatt-ish of wind turbines, around about 100 metres tall, possibly up to 150 metres tall, as a practical solution for England. These can be embedded in the 11 kV distribution system with no grid delays or limited grid delays and simple upgrade work. There's no aviation lighting requirements, as far as I'm aware, for anything under 150 metres that is visible to the human eye. So we don't have to worry then about light pollution. England is so constrained, and the size of the blades for 100 to 150 meter tip machine um, can be very difficult accessibility wise. And so with the smaller machines, we've got easier access and less wayleaves required. It also means a smaller buffer from homes in a heavily constrained England landscape. I think that that is key. Um, and I also think that local communities can actually help source these, and that their realistic and practical scale will help get projects off the ground and mean that people can invest and the benefits shared on something that's a realistic size. So that's my crusade anyway, and I'm very happy to talk more about it with anybody. Um, Next slide, please. So I do have some asks though. England is so constrained that we need compromises. So this means a route to market for smaller commercial turbines, or being able to build closer to homes, prioritising wind on valuable land. Perhaps we could subsidise this. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to build a turbine alongside a motorway because often that land is a higher value. Um, or we need to be able to build in rural areas where there might be designations such as national landscapes designations. Finance is critical, and there are stall projects across the UK, and I'm aware of very many of those. We can't easily find finance for realistic scale projects without long-term price certainty for exporting the power. Especially if our investors are local people, then we need to make sure that their investments will be returned. If I am to type £93.50 into my business model, which is the contracts for a difference price for Hinkley Point, or even £72.24, which is the latest AR7 contracts for a difference price for onshore wind. If I put it into my business model, then in some cases there is enough flesh now in the model to raise investment. But we need long-term financial support or a commitment from an off-taker such as a local authority. The newly published local power plan does outline this, and I am looking forward to getting stuck into the details and having a say as well. Community energy groups are absolutely key as well. Local people know their landscape. I live rurally. I always have done, and I know the value of community. Um, Local people can solve local problems and they can advocate for their own wind projects. But we need to make sure that the benefits are retained and so that they benefit for hosting the wind in their landscape. By keeping local generation in the distribution system and balancing and settling it locally, we can avoid transmission charges and the congestion upstream and can unlock value locally while the distribution network operators and the functions that they need to carry out. So, just to move on to power allotments. Power allotments is a project that I worked on in partnership with Region and on behalf of Devon Energy Collective back in 2023. We asked every parish and town council in Devon to identify a site within their local area for either 5 acres or more of land for 1 megawatt solar, or for land for turbines. Now, this was 2023. Wind wasn't so high in the agenda then, so most of the projects that came back were wind. But I just wanted to say that I think that it went viral in my view because normally I get 25 likes if I put something on LinkedIn. You can see in the image here 872 likes. I think there was 130 comments just from one post on LinkedIn. I had people from other local authorities and areas getting in touch with me. 10,500 views on our interactive map and 73 sites submitted. And this was a very, it was a project that was, there wasn't much resource that went into it. If every parish in Devon hosted 3 1 megawatt wind turbines, we could supply all of Devon's domestic electricity needs. I think we need to model this for the whole country because that's amazing. And then the income opportunity there could be used for rewilding, retrofitting, addressing fuel poverty, and protecting communities at risk of climate change. I really think there's something there. So, wind is now a priority. I'm so excited about that, and I've heard that many times recently. I've been involved in the local authority energy planning. Wind is now a priority. The planning and grid reforms that have been going on since the de facto ban was lifted are working towards enabling more wind power. Huge amounts of great work are going into the spatial energy plans, and we need to action wind and speed up its deployment. Could it be the time to campaign for community wind like the pylon campaigns of the 60s? But we do need to consider the context of sustainability, of course. So we need to be protecting and enhancing biodiversity. And we really need to be thinking about procuring sustainable equipment and addressing circularity in the supply chain. So I think that's it from me. If anyone wants to get in contact with me and who I am, I'm on the final slide there and I'd love to chat. Thanks for listening to me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alice. That's fun. Yeah, yeah, great way to start off. Yeah, just add the power allotment project was certainly the inspiration for Vote Wind that we'll be hearing about later. So yeah, it has so much potential that, and yeah, love the kind of home guard, wartime analogies as well. That's the moment to mobilize everyone to play their part. Um, right, so we'll move on to our next speaker. I'd like to introduce Louise Daniels from Thrive Renewables.
Hi everyone, my name's Louise. I'm from Thrive Renewables. I look after external affairs there, which means the communities who live near our sites, our investors, and obviously also working with our BD team on the funding that we provide for community energy groups. So I've been 15 years in renewables. I was just kind of remembering the first repower of Delabole down in Cornwall. I was kind of involved with that, which was when I was at Good Energy. So got a long history with wind, which is something that I absolutely love. I found your presentation now is really, really interesting and inspiring. And I think you're right that communities are the way that we're going to find the appropriate type of wind that we need, at scale to power the next stage of the kind of the energy transition. So I agree with you that communities are really the right place to be in terms of where the right sites are that are appropriate for them. So I think that your initiative sounds super exciting. Next slide, please. Worth me saying, actually, also I'm on I've very much got my Thrive hat on today, but I'm also in my spare time, I'm on the board of Bath and West Community Energy, which is I'm absolutely, it's really a real privilege and an honour to be able to do that. Thrive Renewables, we have been around for 30 years. We were set up by Triodos Bank originally in response to the Chernobyl crisis, really to kind of turbocharge what was a very nascent sector at that time. There were very few projects going on, so that's where we started. In terms of who we are now, next slide, please. So yeah, we're a team of 20 now. We're supported by over 6,000 shareholders. We sit in the niche between very small projects and kind of on farm one say small turbine project and your kind of big utility. So we sit kind of right in that in the middle there. We provide collaborative capital. So what we're about is plugging funding gaps and getting community energy projects built. So yeah, that's kind of where we sit. We have our own projects, so we own our own projects, and also we provide funding for other projects. And we've if we go on to the next slide, I can show you. So those are our projects across the country, and that includes 6 community energy projects that we've invested over 20 million in over the last. I was trying to think since maybe about not far off 10 years we've been working with community energy. So yeah, that's who we are. In terms of community wind, if we just skip through the next slide. Again, where we operate with community wind is in 2 key areas. There is funding, So we provide construction loans normally to get clean energy projects built, and that includes community energy projects. We also, because we have our own portfolio of projects, including maybe 25 wind projects, we can provide commercial and procurement expertise to support communities who need that kind of help. Our community energy funding bridge started in 2017, so not far off 10 years. And then more recently, we've put together Community Energy Catalyst, which is a £40 million joint venture with Better Society Capital, providing funding for clean energy projects that are specifically community owned, BENCOMs, etc. So, exactly in the space of where you are. So that's the funding we provide to community energy groups. Another area which, again, back to the local power plan, is something which is very live at the moment, is shared ownership. So we have a history there. Our first wind farm, which we built 25 years ago, that was a three turbine wind farm, and one of those turbines was owned successfully by the community. So we've kind of got we understand how to work with communities, both on a funding level, but also on a co-investment and co-ownership level. We were the first commercial battery owner to offer a stake to a local community when we in one of our battery projects, and importantly, we've pledged to offer the community groups a stake in all of our new development projects. So currently we've got one in Wales, one in Scotland, and one in the southeast of England, 2 wind, 1 solar. And we're talking to local communities about and hoping to really provide some proof of concept work around how that will actually look and how it will be for the community energy groups involved. Next slide, please. So I thought I might just skip through the wind projects that we've been involved with. As I say, in addition to Havrig, which was our first farm we had shared ownership, we've been there very much in the first wave of community wind, which happened a lot in Cumbria. And we provide at Meanmore, that was actually our first community funding bridge. And we were basically that was the first commercial wind farm to transfer to community ownership, so from the developer to the community. And we provided bridge funding, our community energy funding bridge, to that community, because often developers need you to work quickly, and you need kind of quick short-term funding in order then to be able to crowd the community, crowd us out essentially with your own fundraising. So that's a model that we've used successfully, and Meanmore is fully community owned, and as all of the repayments have been made, and that's come to its completion, which is really, really good. And then we're very proud to be able to support Dave and his team with construction funding also for the Ambition Community Energy, England's largest wind turbine, which no doubt Dave will tell you a little bit more about later. So to conclude, really, John actually asked us kind of 3 questions, which is why wind, why England, and why now? And I thought that those are some really great, ways of framing it. Why wind? It's an amazing resource. England's really windy. Let's play to our strengths. It uses less land, very, very little land. So although there are opportunities for more biodiversity, and we spend a lot of time kind of thinking about that, and have got some really interesting initiatives, it's also worth bearing in mind that it has very little impact on the farm or wherever it's situated. So I think that's a massive plus. And also for those of you who've already done quite a lot in community groups, who perhaps already got some solar in place, it provides a really nice balance to your solar. So that's why wind. Why England? We all know that infrastructure costs are pushing up consumer bills, people's bills. it's much better to generate the electricity closer to where it's needed, so you need less infrastructure to move it around. And I hope there's some mention of it in the local power plan, but the other hope is that we'll get to make some really good progress on local supply, which I know that you guys are doing an amazing job of lobbying for and demonstrating. Why now? We have the triple whammy: climate, bills, and energy security. And wind is one of has a really massive role to play in helping us tackle those. So yeah, that's me. We're looking forward to your questions and having a really good chat.
Okay, perfect. Right. Yeah, we've got a bit of time in the program now to have a bit of discussion and to take some of your questions. So yeah, seeing the chat's been very active. So the first question we've had in was from Cara Naden. Where can we find the details of the GB Energy funding for community energy? Really keen to look at community-owned wind. So I think, yeah, it's important to phrase the local power plan is the kind of first step in the process, and it's likely to follow through with the funding through the familiar paths like the GB Energy Community Fund. But also, as Louise mentioned, yeah, there could be extra assistance and loan finance available to smooth those commercial relationships with shared ownership deals as well. But it's going to be a mix of, yeah, upfront feasibility and planning funding with then construction finance and all that. But I don't know if others on the panel have had a chance to pick up any of the detail yet, but I think that particular one's, yeah, to be determined a little bit still, but certainly a lot of promise there. So if we go to more specific, so Lee Barker, maybe one for you, Alice here. Can you point us towards embodied carbon figures for wind turbines and how they compare to other not putting you on the spot, how they compare to other energy generation? And yeah, often do we get people saying, "Oh, what about the steel and the concrete in the footprint piles and things?" How do you respond to that?
Thanks, Lee. Thanks, John. Lee, I'm not probably the best person to answer that. I'm probably a bit out of date. And so I wonder whether Community Energy England has a resource for those kind of figures.
Mm,
The last figures I saw were 6 to 9 months worth of generation to counteract the embodied carbon, but I
yeah.
think there must be something better out there.
Yeah, I think you're in the right ballpark there. Most embodied life cycle carbon studies tend to show that turbines paying back their carbon debt used to produce them within the first year of operation by offsetting gas and coal emissions and things like that. So I've seen an excellent slide out there recently. It was more framed around solar panels, where one shipment of solar panels offsets 150 shipments of natural gas. So this, yeah, and I'm sure there's a similar kind of volume comparison in terms of kit and fuel for wind power as well. But that's exactly the sort of thing we've got an ethical supply chain working group, and yeah, I'm sure that can be picked up in the wind working group, that sort of kind of challenge. I know there's some issues around, yeah, like wind turbines on moorland and peatland and what sort of ground you're building on and the impact of access roads and things can have on the overall carbon footprint of a development. But I think that's why it's important to have a democratic community involvement in terms of site selection and taking all those factors into consideration to get the right balance between electricity and other impacts. Another question here for Else, for Will Horton. What do you think was the key to getting so much engagement in your power allotments project?
Thanks, Will. I have to say it was actually that the people we didn't do much outreach. It wasn't in the budget. So the LinkedIn posts were just quickly done. We wrote to the Association of Parishes, Devon Association of Parishes, and that letter went out to every single parish council, and many of those people then took it forward and mentioned it at the parish council meetings that they had. I think there's over 200 parishes. We also, I wrote an article, a very short article, and it went straight into Positive News, and one went into Wicked Leaks. And I didn't even try very hard. I'm not a PR person, but it was more that that's what people really like. And that was what's so amazing about it. So we tried a little bit on that, but most of our time was actually looking at land and practical development of projects. But people actually just really think it's a good idea.
Great. Just have a look through the questions. Um, so it's a kind of finance related one from Saskia here. In terms of long-term certainty of income for the power sales, what else do you think would be a key enabling factor for community-owned onshore wind? Um, so I guess that could apply to both to new build and but also the shared ownership opportunities. Louise, do you want to?
Well, obviously, CFD is the current, is the current mechanism. Obviously, I am conscious that that's not currently available to community energy projects at the kind of scale that communities do. But I think that's something. I believe that's something that in your community energy and in your new campaign, actually, that you're really, really pushing for. I believe. So that the contracts for difference are one way of, that provides us the certainty of a government support mechanism. Do you want me to? I can explain what a CFD is. I don't know whether that's helpful, or whether we're going to assume that people know what that is. Um,
Well, I say if we're doing wind projects above 5 megawatts, then technically we can be
yeah,
applying for contracts for difference under the current regime. We don't need a
yeah,
specific one. I think that's the minimum threshold, isn't it? But
that's
that's
right.
where
Yeah,
you're basically guaranteed a floor price for your power and then linked to the wholesale market. And if it's above that, you pay a little bit back to the treasury. And if it's under, you get topped up. So it's kind of,
that's right. And I think
yeah.
the thing that it's important to point out there is that that provides long-term certainty not only for the wind farm operator, but also for the consumer electricity, the consumer as well. It provides a long-term, it's a really helpful tool
Mm.
to avoid price shocks for the end, for the bill payer.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think we're going to hear a little bit more about that local supply benefit from other speakers later on. And I've seen a few comments as well about just the size of wind turbines. Like a 1 megawatt turbine is still pretty big. There was a comment from Gillian in the chat. And how is there in terms of the setback distances that you mentioned, Alf, and like how do we? What's generally a good rule of thumb in terms of being a good neighbour and yeah, yeah, finding the locations.
Yeah, it's a good question that. So for a 1 megawatt EWT, for example, we've done a lot of no I've done a lot of noise studies in the last couple of years based on those. I think the closest that we could probably get for most of the sites was just short of 600 meters, between 5 and 600 meters. You might be able to get a turbine closer to houses according to noise guidance in a noisier environment, maybe a more of an urban environment. Um, and then going up to the much bigger schemes, then, in a rural area, you'd need a kilometre of distance. And that's why I was talking really about designations, etc., because we're trying to find places to put wind turbines. They need to be commercial. They need to create a return. And yet, there's no subsidy for anything that's under 5 megawatts and no CFD. And actually, I think we're going to fail because we can't find, there's not enough land for us to be setting 1 kilometre setback distances and getting these turbines in England. I've spent the last 2 years, that was my challenge at Octopus Energy Generation, to try and deploy wind in England. And at the very end of it, I feel, in my view, that we're going to need to focus on 1 megawatt, which can just about work in certain circumstances. And if we can get something to help us there so that we can benefit people living locally properly, then that's the way to go.
Great. Yeah, I think, obviously since the end of the feed-in tariff, there used to be a very well-established kind of small and medium-sized wind turbine market, but things have moved on a lot since then. The first one I did was an 11 kilowatt Gaia turbine for a community centre. And it's a lovely looking machine, but it's we've got to remember that the physics behind wind power are different to solar power in terms of the scale and the effort you put in. It's kind of is a factor of a cube of the wind swept wind area. So like one big 1 megawatt turbine isn't equivalent to 101 kilowatt ones. It's not a linear relationship. So it's finding the right balance between the effort you put into these projects and the kind of scale of turbine. There is some talk about permitted development for kind of farm-based turbines for kind of smaller 50 kilowatt machines potentially. We haven't heard any movements on that, but that's certainly something the NFU have been asking for and could be an area that we look at in the future. Well, just wanted to ask Louise one more question whilst we've got her on the Q&A panel. With the shared ownership, in your experience, there's this question about should it be voluntary or should it be mandatory? And we're getting approached by developers who are kind of seeing it's the right thing to do and yeah, quite open to explore it as an option. How are you finding, what do you feel the benefits are for the commercial developers with that?
So I think most commercial developers, or many commercial kind of larger scale commercial developers, um, find it, find the idea of working with community energy quite challenging. Although they're very, generally they're obviously very much know that they need to work with communities, and I think that's where we come in really, because of our history of doing so and kind of continued commitment as a developer to offering it on our own projects. Where we see it really is we're about giving people a chance to be part of the solution, and we're about bringing people together to get clean energy projects built. So for us, it just makes perfect sense from a mission perspective, because fundamentally we're not going to get what we need built, or and until communities feel that it's done with them rather than done to them. And that's what community energy is about, and that's what shared ownership is about.
Mm.
So for us, it's something that makes perfect sense, and we're really keen to, on a mission basis. And obviously we're working really hard to make sure that it makes perfect sense on a commercial basis as well for both parties.
Yeah, good. So yeah, I personally I think there's positives for both kind of counterparties, the commercial and the community with that sort of relationship and just the
Yeah,
long-term
I
political.
think I think that community energy, it there are some it really is place specific. Some communities will really want to do it themselves, and build up effectively a business, a business, a community business doing that. Other communities may not have the resource to be able to do that. So that what they really want is to be able to have a share in a project which is basically de-risked,
Mm.
sorted out. I think that it's really, for each project that we work on, we start with, well, what does that place, what's right for that place and what's right for those people, and that's where, and what's right for the climate, etc., etc. So
Yeah,
we come at it from three different directions.
great. Okay. Yeah, we've got lots of chat and interesting questions coming in. I might wrap this panel up right now, but there's like, for example, there's a question about repowering, and I'll try and pick that up later on in the webinar and give a chance for some of our other speakers to do their bits. But yeah, thank you very much, Alice and Louise, and yeah, hearts and applause, please. Right, and I'd like to bring in Dave Green for the next part of the talk.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I'm Dave Green. I'm development manager at Sharenergy. I also happen to be a director of Shropshire and Telford Community Energy. I'll call it SDCE because that's a lot simpler. SDCE own and run an existing 10 megawatt solar farm, but for the last 4 years, we've also been working on a what is now a wind project in Bishop's Castle alongside Lightfoot, which is a local charity, and with Sharenergy, who are leading on the sort of consultancy side. So I've got two hats with this project. We now have planning permission for a 900 kilowatt turbine that would be around 54 meters to the hub or 80 meters to the tip. Now, 54 meters to the hub. Um, I keep saying, oh, well, that's two good trees. But one of the objectors to the planning application did point out there was 11 double-decker buses, which does sound quite a bit more. And certainly, this is small by today's standards, much smaller than the Lawrence Western turbine that you're going to hear about shortly. But it is still sizable. It is still much, much bigger than anything, certainly in Shropshire and the surrounding area. And we've got a site for it just it's about a mile outside of Bishop's Castle. Next slide, please. So this tells us where the turbine is. We started with two sites, and we went out to sort of public consultation, and we had a lot of objections. The other site was nearer the top of the map there, and you can see there's Oakley Farm and Oakley House that would have looked straight across at it. We're just about 500 meters from the nearest property, but is owned by the landowner. We're about halfway up the hill. We are just inside the area of outstanding natural beauty. So almost all wind tools will rule out an AONB and say, well, you can't put a wind turbine there. Well, you can. And in fact, the Shropshire Hills, I know it's not called an area of outstanding natural beauty anyway. Now is it? It's a national landscape, whatever. But you know what I mean. The Shropshire Hills Management Partnership did not object to this application. They might have objected if we put it right at the top of the hill. But basically their response was, well, we see climate change as the biggest threat to the Shropshire Hills. And so they've actually been very supportive. They didn't actually support the planning application officially, but they never do. They either object or abstain. So next slide, please. So this is one of the visualizations that we had done. So you can see that it will be a major feature on the landscape. There's no escaping that. But basically, we had no local objections to the planning application at all, not one. There were five objections on the portal, but none of them were local. And some of them were arguing about the effect on the Shropshire Hills, which is a bit odd because the Shropshire Hills Management Partnership weren't objecting. And some of it was about effect on a listed garden, which is well over the hill, a long way away. So no local object, which we were absolutely gobsmacked by. The town council were very supportive. I went in there expecting to have lots of questions, and they just said, all in favour, yes, and we were out in 5 minutes. And crucially, the local councillor and the leader of the council, who lives very close by, are both very supportive. Next slide. So I've just covered most of this, haven't I? We now have 3 years to get the turbine. I would just add that the planning application was so uncontroversial that it was the permission was given under delegated powers. It didn't even go to committee. And this would have been unheard of 10 years ago when Sharenergy was last working on wind turbine projects. We had a lot of local objection. We now have 3 years to get the turbine built. We're looking now to fit a second-hand Enercon E48. It's the same turbine as being used by Initeg. I used to be a bit skeptical about second-hand turbines, but I now come around to the fact that yes, they can work. The company RFM, who are building the Initeg, are doing they're doing a really thorough job. We've had a look at the Initeg turbine in their workshop. They're doing a really good job, and they reckon that it actually comes out in better nick than when it came out the factory brand new. We are setting up a new community benefits society to own and run the turbine. We were originally thinking of running it as a subsidiary of STCE. But basically, one of the things we want to do is to set up an energy club. I know everyone wants to start an energy club these days, but we think we have a serious case here. And in order to do that, we need license exempt supplier, and SDCE already want to use that for their solar farm. So we're having to set up a new society. Next, please. The original idea for the turbine was to supply electricity for a heat network. In fact, we started off really as a heat network project, and then said, well, we're going to need a wind turbine to power the heat pumps. And I think that was actually part of the reason that it's got so much support, because we had a clear rationale of why we wanted a wind turbine in that location. Nobody could say, oh, build it over the hill or put it in Wales. But actually, so I was a bit worried when we thought, we can't make the heat network stack up. It's just too expensive. The cost of the pipework has gone through the roof. The cost of oil at Bishop's Castle is off the gas grid, so it's all mostly oil heating. The cost of oil has stagnated, and the government grant has effectively halved. So we couldn't make it stack up, and I thought we might get a bit of a backlash that people felt they were being led up the garden path. But actually, been very supportive. We've had a public meeting. We've been back to the town council. Everybody was saying, congratulations on getting the planning application. Get on and get it built. So yeah. But that does mean that we now need to find an off-taker for the turbine. It's really not going to work very well if we just connect into the grid at current PPA prices. So we do want a direct off-taker. I don't know if you can see at the bottom of the map here, there is an orange blob. Well, that's the leisure centre, which has a swimming pool and they're currently fitting their own heat pumps, so they're going all electric. So the idea is that we connect into the leisure centre and sell them about 25-30% of our generation, and then the rest of it can go to the grid from there, and then that can go feed into the energy club. The one complication is that the leisure centre is owned by Shropshire Council, but there's a tenant who actually runs it, and that tenancy is up for renewal. So we're trying to persuade Shropshire Council to basically to sign an agreement directly with us, and then that agreement will go into their procurement for the new tenancy, rather than waiting for the new tenants to come along and trying to negotiate with them. Next, please. So the current plan is for the turbine to feed into the leisure centre and to go out. We should be looking at 15 to 20% discount for the leisure centre, and then any electricity not used can be exported to the grid. Next, please. There are various additional options that we're looking at. We could technically supply the college as well. The college is the secondary school, basically, is right next door to the leisure centre, but if in order to supply them as well by direct wire, then we would need 1 meter and sub meters, and somebody would have to be responsible for the billing and sub billing. And the college are really not keen on that idea, and I don't blame them really. We could supply the college or other large users indirectly, so that's through the sort of P442 mechanism, whereby you can, as a license exempt supplier, you can sell electricity directly to a larger user and save some of the costs of using the network. We can set up an energy club. If we set up an energy club and we're giving people discounted electricity, then we would encourage them to fit heat pumps, because we've managed to narrow the spark gap, and then the idea is that we would have 2 or 3 installers that we can recommend, and that we can say, go around and see Mary, she's had one fitted, and then probably direct them to loans as well, particularly if the Great British Energy loans come about, as have been trumpeted for over 2 years now. And then the last thing we could do is encourage home batteries, because that would then increase the amount of energy that the energy club can take up, the amount of sort of the better match we would have between our generation and people's demand. So that would be good. We're also looking at the options of fitting a battery at the leisure centre itself. And if we can do that, then we could turn the leisure centre into a warm hub so that it's somewhere that people can go to keep warm and have a cup of tea and maybe a bit of food if the power goes down in the rest of the town. Next, please. So there are two issues that need to be sorted. One, we need to get the new grid connection agreed, and the agreement with Shropshire Council to include in the agreement. We have been promised 950 kilowatts to the grid. We had originally wanted solar panels as well as the wind turbine, but we've been told for the next 5 years or so that's not going to be possible. But we have been promised that we can connect up to 900 kilowatts to the grid. We just need a new agreement now that we're doing it as a standalone project. And we need to get Shropshire Council to sign an agreement. We trust that there shouldn't be an issue with this, as significant savings will be available, which will make the contract more attractive. But, we do need to sort out the details of how that electricity will be charged for and at what rate will need to be agreed. And working in community energy, I know that one of the issues is often that, you start off very well when you're talking to the climate change or sustainability officer, or but then somehow it lands on the desk of legals or procurement, and everything grinds to a halt. So we're working hard to make sure that doesn't happen here. And luckily the council did change hands last year, so we now have the strong support from the leader of the council. Next slide, please. Right, so that's me really. If you want to contact me, ask any questions, that's my email. There's information on the Lightfoot Enterprises website. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dave. I think you might have the accolade of being, is it one of the first wind projects to get planning permission after the planning ban was lifted as well?
Yes. I mean, I didn't go into detail because I only had 10 minutes, but it took us 2.5 years to get permission to ask for permission. And just after we got permission to ask for permission, the government came in and lifted the de facto ban. So we'd actually found a way around the ban. So we were already working on putting a planning application together when the ban was lifted. So I don't know, people might correct me, but I don't know of any other community wind projects in England which are anywhere near this advanced. There is, of course, Initeg in Wales, who are running a share offer currently on ethics. Other share offers are available, yes. So
I know the GB Energy Community Fund that the Net Zero Hubs administer. They did publish the list of successful recent projects as part of the local power plan press release, and I can see at least another 6 community wind projects going through that process.
Right.
So yes, people are following in your footsteps.
Great.
And then segue on to the next speaker. I think we're bringing Dave Tudgey, who's got giant footsteps when it comes to delivering community wind. Right, over to you, David.
Hello, thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, I didn't realize I've run out of water as well, so I didn't realize my throat was going to be closed up. Sorry, I've just recovering from a fever. So it's Valentine's Day coming up, and I'll try and just speak through my throat at the moment. But yeah, Valentine's Day is coming up, and it was about this time in 2023 that I took my wife along to see the turbine being erected, and she wasn't that pleased. So we did move on to where we were going, but I did take the day off with her to do that. But yeah, it's amazing that we're at this point now that we can actually say we love wind, and I think we can genuinely say that we can actually say that onshore wind is more popular than baked beans on toast, and you can look up the national statistics for baked beans on toast and the support for onshore wind. So we're there, I think, and that's credit to all of you in community energy, because I think we've really worked hard to really communicate what community energy is and what it means to us and what it could mean for other people. So yeah, so I'm just going to talk you through about community power solutions. I also work for Bristol Energy Network, which I co-founded in 2008 at the point of the Climate Change Act. And I don't really mention the C word when we're engaging with communities because it's frightening and scary for people. And I think we have to kind of acknowledge where people are at and find out where they're at and work for it. So I do wear my climate stripes. I do talk about climate change and I fully understand it. I used to be an environmental consultant for Parsons Brinkhoff. But we've got an approach that's all about community power, getting people excited and infused about the potential of community energy and really how this can be the engine of change and the just transition can be powered by onshore wind. So next slide, please. And oh, I forgot to mention, and what a great celebration it is this week to acknowledge the local power plan. I've just put some links in there in the chat where you can have a look later about how these projects that you've all been involved with in has really shaped policy that we see today. So the opportunity is to transform communities and really infuse and excite them about their potential. And when I first started working with Ambition Lawrence Western, they couldn't see that potential at the time within themselves to do what was happening in other parts of the city. And through working with them at a community level, they began to find that confidence. And so they asked me to build them a wind turbine following the successful development of a solar farm which Bristol Energy Network worked with Bristol Energy Cooperative to achieve for Ambition Lawrence Western, and that was successful. So they wanted their own turbine that was fully owned by the community, and this is what we've been able to develop here in Lawrence Western, and we now have a plan to scale it nationally across the country and work with yourselves to do that. So yeah, so with the decades of experience within the team of Community Power Solutions and the technical ability of the team, we're able to really take that enthusiasm of communities and deliver at scale large term onshore wind turbines. And that investment leads back into directly into community priorities, and that's what next slide, please. I'm just gonna move on to that slide there. So yeah, so already this year we've put £100,000 back into Ambition Lawrence Western through the Ambition Community Energy CIC wind turbine, and that was constructed in 2023. So this is a significant amounts of money which will only go up as the debt is paid down, and it's wholly owned by the community, and that's what we're about, empowering wholly owned ownership where possible. Obviously, we will work with whatever stage people are at in terms of if they're community organisations with a partner in partnership in mind, then we can work with that as well. But these are about how do we actually really make a real substantial difference. So they need to be large turbines, and I would never say up to on any turbine. And a person who would like to do a 200-meter tip height turbine, where it was suitable. And I think that's the point really, is it's about the suitability of the sites and it coming back to democratic process. That is the planning process, and we follow that process very, very carefully. And in order to reduce the risk of objections involving the communities from day one about the concept of large onshore wind and giving them the hope and the vision of one or two or even three or four large turbines on a hill or on a plateau or wherever that's suitable. And I think the suitability has to be undertaken by professional people who are undertaking this. It can't be a would you like a turbine here or would you like a turbine there, because that doesn't necessarily make sense. Sometimes it's to do with grid constraints, so you can't do it where people would like to do it. Sometimes it's to do with other things such as particular bird species like ground nesting birds that fly vertically like skylarks and things like that. So there are certain things that the constraints you can't even imagine. So you may have like pictured a site in your head and that's where you're going to put it. And that may not be the right way to go. Anyway, next slide, please. Yeah, so going back to the process, so Community Power Solutions has a codified methodology, proven technology and methodology. It's currently being delivered with the Lee Farm project. At the moment, you can see there's a link there to that project. And we've done that work with Bristol Energy Network to create a new network with community energy partners. We've supported the initiation of that. Bristol Energy Cooperative got the funding, but we helped to form the local groups locally that actually are part of that network. Some of them were already network members of Bristol Energy Network, but now having formed CICs, supported them to deliver community outreach and to build the consensus of understanding what community energy is. Because once the turbine's up, it's just going to turn and it's going to deliver the power and it's going to deliver the surplus for those communities. And then it's about how do we really get that best out of that surplus that comes out of it. So helping to inform communities right from get-go what this could mean for them, how it can actually transform their communities is part of the process. So coming back to it, I won't go into the detail of all the studies that we do, but we do comprehensive first in class, best in class studies that we do. And in fact, when Bristol City Council accepted our planning application, they said it's the best they've ever seen in terms of the quality of the environmental impact and how well we do. So we do everything in a robust fashion, and that's crucial to making sure planning success. So next slide, please. So I won't talk more than 10 minutes, but if you want to hear a bigger story about, and the longer version of this and about the vision and about where we're heading, do have a look for the screw this. I can't remember what it's called. Screw this. Let's try something different. So yeah, so I think they put the link in there, and it's been shared through the Star newspaper and the Mirror, and it's going out to try and reach communities that haven't been reached before, because it's quite good, that we talk to each other and we reflect each other's views, but it's important to kind of engage with people that don't typically engage with the media that we read. And sometimes we have to really listen to what people are saying to us. So sometimes, there's these sort of like magazines that are free newspapers that I don't know where they're being funded from. It seems quite unusual. They're promoting the use of Russian fertilizers and things like that. It's the Light magazine, and they've got this whole paper about renewable energy, but that's circulating out in some of these communities. And you'll hear when we did the public consultation, the majority of people were supportive, overwhelmingly supportive, and that we're doing that public engagement at the moment. And I think that's true, but you will get the odd person that's read these magazines and they're fully like confused, and they're telling you you're the reason why COVID happened and you're this and you're that because they've read the magazine, if you like. And rather than dismiss and sort of like try and change their mind, just listening and actually saying, okay, I get that, and actually responding with care and love, and basically just saying, okay, but if these turbines are built, they will produce significant value and significant surplus. What would you like to see that surplus spent on? And then you open up a different conversation to the one that you were having. So I just want to say about spread the love. Let's focus on love. Let's focus on inspiration. Let's focus on how we can build each other up. And look at the legacy. So hopefully these turbines, once they're built in Lee Farm, they'll be 180 meters tall. The tip height, two of them, and the actual hub height is 112 meters. The only reason I haven't gone bigger is because I can't fit bigger ones in there. And the only reason we haven't done more turbines, can't fit more turbines in. So that's what we've got is something that's going to power a community and inspire the rest of the South Gloucestershire area. And we've got a pipeline of other projects. This is a private wire project, but there's no transition without transmission. You can repeat that as a chant sometimes when you're getting frustrated, and which I certainly did to National Grid. And we did actually campaign as Community Power Solutions to National Grid to look at the reserve capacity, move it up to 5 megawatts. We were successful. So just remember, sands shift. So just because your horizon is kind of pushed down at the moment, you can only do 1 megawatt because of this and that and the other. actually remember this is a climate emergency. We have to respond. Alice is completely right. We need to be on a war footing, and we should have been on a war footing a long time ago. And I thought this would have been done by now because I'm, 46 now, and I would have thought it would have all been done, but it's not done, and we're here. So let's actually see this as an opportunity for the transition, not to be another transition from wealth from one group to another, but actually a one which communities actually uh, are owning the power going forwards. Next slide, please. So yeah, we can provide turbines from, I want a turbine to here's your turbine. And literally that's what we've done with groups in South Gloucestershire. We went out there, we spoke to them, we asked them, "Wait, would you like a turbine? Would you like a big one?" Explain why they have to be big because of the, to cover their costs and so on. Going small is just unless you've got, going to use all the consumption next door to it, like Dave was describing, it's very hard to make small turbines work at all. So yes, we have to think big and we have to be brave and just go for it. And so yeah, join us on that journey. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is, he's even got faith in this one. This is everyone in there celebrating, and this is what it can look like once you've completed your turbine. You can be celebrating together, and yeah, just keep going is what I can say with everyone, all the work you're doing. I think it's inspirational, everyone's involved in this process, and I love Bishop Castle. I remember doing air quality assessments around there. They've got an air quality analyzer there on the top of the hill. It's beautiful. And I just think having a turbine will make it even more beautiful. I do love the turbines. And I just think we just have to remember once upon a time across Bristol, there would have been smoke chimneys piling out, people coughing all over the place, people not being able to see from the end of the street. And at the bottom of our turbine site used to be a blinking coal mine with like sending kids down there and all the rest of it. So this is a transition that isn't killing people. This is about a transition where we're empowering people, transforming culture, transforming society, and the benefits go from more than many generations beyond this. And once the turbine's reached the end of its life, and this Lawrence Weston one could be there for 30 years. Design life's 25, but it's not really working as hard as it would in Scotland. So these things have got years on them, and you can always, if the power station next door gets removed, I think we'll put a bigger one there, maybe 200-meter tip height one. And this other thing about assessments, I think they are vital. We do need to do environmental assessments because I don't want to harm birds. I don't want to harm bats. I spent my life working on that when I was working at Parsons Brinkhoff, protecting these things. So I want to do the assessments properly and make sure that we don't harm any wildlife. I don't want to cause noise to people and give them concerns. We do proper noise assessments. We've got feathered edges on our turbine blades, so the noise isn't what it was. We've got direct drive turbines now, so there's no gears. So there's just so much positive that I can talk about, which I won't bother with. Go onto the podcast or look on that Sky News thingamajig. And I actually took a farmer. I was putting a noise meter in his in his monitor in his garden. He was like, "Oh, I don't like this." He asked me. I asked him, "Would you like could I put a noise monitor in at your property?" Because he's in one of the nearest properties. He's like, "No, no, no, no." And I was like, "Okay, fair enough, fair enough." And then he said, "Well, tell me a bit about the project and what is it?" And I told him about the technology, and he said, "You got me interested now." And he said, "If you take me to the turbine site that you've built, I'll consider it." So I took him and his wife. I treated them like royalty to the turbine site. I played them the Sky News video and the podcast there. And they got there and they just like this. It's amazing. Can't hear it at all underneath the turbine. You can hear the road. Can't hear the turbine. And they said, yeah, we haven't got a problem with that. So yeah, you can put a noise monitor in our garden. And I call it a sound monitor now. Because it's
Great.
recording sound, not noise. Well, it's recording the noise, background noise of the motorway and stuff. But it's not recording noise from the turbine because there won't be anyway. So there's lots of good stuff I could say. My throat's hurting, so I'll stop.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dave. That was brilliant, and thank you for all your passion for this, and thank you for your wife as well, for enjoying her wind date and still giving you all the time to work on this.
Yes.
We're going to move on to Stefan now to give a demonstration of the tool we've developed with him, VoteWind. We'll try and fit some time in for questions as well, but that's the point of the working group, is to continue all these conversations. So yeah, thank you, and Stefan.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all the wonderful panelists. It's been a really interesting session. Just sort of coming back to our Valentine's theme, I've done enough dating to know that you kind of need to know what the other person looks like before you attempt to date. And so, really, we love wind. We want wind. Next slide, please. We Want Wind was designed to kind of essentially show you what the thing that you're going to fall in love with is going to look like. That was the idea behind We Want Wind back in April 2024, before the onshore de facto ban was lifted. And it's based on my own experience. In 2019, I was in a village called Histon outside Cambridge, and we were thinking about doing a wind site. And we got a few people together in the pub, and we sat around and said, look, okay, we're going to do a wind site. And someone says, well, we need to do a wind feasibility study. It's going to cost us £10,000. And at that point, you could basically see everyone's interest suddenly vanish to nothing. And then we tried to have another meeting, and basically it was me and one other person, and that was the end of that, really. So it was a very salutary lesson how, some degree of, initial assessment is really important to actually help kind of get people's sense of where a wind turbine might actually go. And that was what drove We Want Wind in 2024. And then straight after that, the ban was lifted, and people were asking, how do we do different site layers, different size turbines? And also, how do we essentially make that criteria much more open source so that everyone can use the same criteria? And that was the idea behind OpenWind.energy, which was launched middle of last year. And then again, speaking to John, and a massive shout out to John Taylor and the Energy Learning Network collaboration. John immediately saw the potential and said, look, can we do a site, focused on onshore wind for the Energy Learning Network? And I said, yes, we can. And we got on and we built, and that was what became VoteWind, which was launched at the first anniversary of the lifting of the onshore wind ban in July last year. So I will now move straight over to a demo. So bear with me. Right, so this is the VoteWind homepage. And it's very easy, but I click on Use My Location. This shows me I'm down in Brighton, shows me a map of Brighton, and the blue shaded bits determine essentially areas are more and less suitable for wind. If I decrease the color, you can see basically some areas are very blue, other areas are slightly less blue. So I'm going to choose an area over here, which is I think it's on the South Downs. Click on a little one there. And that's my wind turbine position. I can then run a visibility display on that. So if I click on the little binoculars, it will show me where that turbine is visible. So actually, I think I've probably chosen a turbine in the bottom of the valley, which is why it's not very visible, which is no bad thing. So let me move it over here to there we go. That's right on the top of the South Downs near Kingston. And then if I want to see what that wind turbine looks like, I can click on the little video camera icon, which it then loads a 3D visualization of the turbine using Google Tile Maps. It takes a little bit of time to load, but once it loads, it's a very photorealistic image. So bear with me. A little bit of peace and quiet, no bad thing.
Yeah, I think this is really good to sync in with things like future energy landscapes, isn't it? There we go.
So there's the turbine. I think I've positioned it just on the lee side of the slope there. That's the South Downs there. One of my favourite walks, actually. I love working on this bit here. And you can see it from all the way around. And then, so I want to see what it looks like from my house. I click on this icon up here. So the question is, can I actually see it from where I actually live in Brighton? So just bear with me. This is my road in Clifton Road. I've had to just move up here above my rooftop. So I'm now floating above my rooftop. And as you can see, just in the distance there is the turbine, just hidden behind the hill. And I can move around and see the rest of Brighton. So essentially with these view of the houses, you can get a sense of how a turbine looks from your actual area. So that's the visualization. And then down here, we have the planning constraints. So right now, this turbine is showing it's hitting the ecology and wildlife layer, the landscape and visual impacts layer, residential buildings, big issue, I think, as Al mentioned, and then safety buffers. So even with a very small turbine, a 100-meter turbine, this is hitting the safety buffer. So let's move the turbine over here. Right, so this is basically happens to be in the South Downs National Park, but apart from that, it's really great. It's only hitting one layer, and I can look in more detail. If I click on this little link here, I can then look at the East Sussex layer, East Sussex County Council layer, and I can now basically switch off the various layers to see which are the most problematic. So that's residential buildings, a big issue with sound constraints. But again, that's fine. So it's not hitting residential. It's not hitting technical. So if it falls over, it's not going to hit a pipeline or a power line. Heritage impacts, absolutely fine. The problem is it's the old South Downs National Park. There we go. Quite a large area. So, but potentially even there is some talk that there may be, if there's enough people interested in the local area, there may be some flexibility in that. So that's the basic run through of Vote Wind. Just move my browser over. Go back to the main website. So having selected my site, I can then vote for it by clicking on Cast Vote. It says your vote has been cast. And then it says you can share it on social media, and it also shows you the nearest community energy groups to that position. So Ouse Valley or Meadow Blue. So then if I'm an individual in the community, I'm thinking, well, I'm kind of interested in a wind turbine. I can then click on that link and find out more about the local group. Or if there's no group in my area, we've created a nice little guide, step-by-step, 5-step guide to how to build your own community energy group. And I know it's tough, but we need to basically, if we're going to achieve the wind onshore goals, we need to increase the number of groups across England by a factor of 10. So from 450 to 4,500 community energy groups need to exist if we're going to deliver the kind of ambitious targets. So that's Vote Wind, a very quick run through. Website votewind.org. You can also look at we have the individual layers for all the different council areas across the UK. We've got a big list of them. So whether you're a parish council, town council, county council, we've got all the different breakdowns for your council on this list. Fully automatic, fully updated. Right, I'll now pass back to anything else about Vote Wind? Start map. Oh, we've got a leaderboard. Yes, that's quite important. So you can see who's voted across the UK. It's about 107 votes so far. And you can zoom in different areas of the voting on the leaderboard, which is quite fun. What else? Map. We've also got a list of community energy groups. If I switch off.
Stefan, we had a question about wind speeds earlier. Can you put the wind speed layer on?
Absolutely. Yep, good point. So here's the wind speed layer there. Click on Show Wind Speeds. And if you float over there, you can see on the top left, it shows the wind speed for that position of the cursor. So if I click there, it will also show it as a little yellow circle there as well, the wind speed. And also nearest substation as well. So there's our if we turn off the wind speed for a moment, you can see the substation there. Nearest substation, nearest turbine. And there's the planning constraints. Yep. What else is there? So I think that's broadly the demo. Unless John's got points I've missed.
No, carry on. I think we're going to move on to announcing the wind working group before we hit 2 o'clock and then take some questions, I think. So anything you want to...
I'll just quickly finish off my slide. So next slide, please. So a key part of our methodology is about open data. So we use open data throughout. We have an open data portal. We have an open data methodology for deriving the layers. The layers are based on the Centre for Sustainable Energy's recommended guidance as well, because we believe if you're a community, you spent a lot of time selecting a site based on some criteria, it's crucial that the councils are also using the same methodology. So rather than using a different methodology. So that's the idea behind OpenWind.energy, is to have an open and shared methodology for deriving the layers. So that's very key to our approach, a key to the methodology, and the key to actually scaling stuff up as well to make it so that we can achieve large scale onshore wind. If we have the next slide, please. Right, so what's on the horizon? So we're talking to DNOs a lot, and they're really keen to hear from community energy groups about the kind of data sets that they would like to see provided by the DNOs. That's one thing. We're also extending the open wind energy methodology to include things like solar. That's going to be called open site energy. We're also looking at AI, using AI within the platform to speed up the development of community energy projects. And we'll do that in a way that's robust, resilient, and fully open. And in general, we're very keen to collaborate with any organisation. We've already worked with, obviously, Energy Loan Network, Community Energy England, Scotland, and Wales. We work with Friends of the Earth as well. We're talking with UKPN about integrating with their Leap Plus platform. But in general, yeah, we love to work in partnership. It's key to delivering onshore wind across England and Wales and Scotland. And one final slide. Next, please. Yes, so I heart Rampion. This is a picture of Rampion wind farm. And this is a view on my regular walks on the South Downs. And I love Rampion. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's a vision of the future, a vision full of hope and joy and positivity. And I think that's how we should be embracing onshore wind. It's a really positive, exciting solution. And it looks absolutely great as well. This is the view from the South Downs. What a wonderful view. And there's a little old windmill at the bottom left as well.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it. Let's love wind. So thanks, John, and back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Stefan. And yeah, I think offshore wind could be a topic for the next one. I know we've got Project Colette and Energy for All working on some exciting things. So yeah, one for next time. Kirsten just asked, is there a charge for on wind? No, it's been funded through the Energy Learning Network with the Lottery Fund money. So it's open access for any community energy organisation to use. And yeah, we want to sync it in well with the kind of GB Energy Community Fund and the other professionals like Community Power Solutions and Future Energy Landscape type workshops. So that's, yeah, the working group will be about, yeah, how can we bring everything we discussed today and really make the most of it. I'll just announce a few things and loop back to some questions in a moment. So next slide, please. So yes, the new Community Energy England Wind Working Group. It's going to, yeah, really tie together all the conversations that we've started off today. Where do we buy turbines from? How big are they? How much do they cost? I know there's we've had EWT and Innovus and others in the chat offering some professional support on that front. And we've been talking to Infinite Renewables in Wales and Dulles, who have been carrying on as normal in Wales and Scotland because they haven't had the same issues of England. But yeah, bringing in that knowledge from the rest of the UK back into England. And yeah, just really supporting each other to plough forward with more wind projects. We've scheduled the first meeting for the 11th of March at 11 to 12. Any Community Energy England member can join. There's a Google form linked through the website. We'll share it via the email as well for you to register your interest. And maybe we can link it in the chat as well. But that's the best way to communicate your interest in the wind working group is through that process, please. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up. This is a little hobby of mine as I collect photos of village wind signs out of their windmills, the village emblem. I made this nice little collage, and it really shows that people can have real civic pride in their wind projects. And I think this is something we can all aim for, is having community wind turbines as our kind of symbols of our communities in the future. And actually, Hockerton have already kind of got there down in the bottom corner. Hockerton Community Wind Turbines are actually already on their village sign. So yeah, this is all ahead of us. So thank you very much. Right, do we have any time for a few quick questions? I know we've got a few wrap-up things to do. I guess given the timings, like David, what the kind of one thing that would really help you scale up your projects, or kind of replicate it in the future?
I think for me, it's the development finance has got to be unlocked, and we're discussing that at the moment with government about how we can unlock that. Because I think once you've got planning permission and you've got your grid connection sorted, then that other type of finance is easier to come by. Don't know who's trying to phone me right now. Sorry. Yeah, so I think that's the key to unlocking a lot of this, and I think as Al was mentioned earlier about having mechanisms that are reliable. The P442 exists. I wasn't going to talk about that because it's too technical, but you need something that's kind of a bit more robust. It needs a bit more clarification to give confidence to suppliers like OVO or Octopus or whatever to really get behind that sort of supply exempt route, which I won't go into that detail and try not to go into detail with you on that. But that they giving confidence for investors that want to see that you've got a floor price for your energy. There are mechanisms that can be done, and I'm going to be talking to government about those and with yourselves going forwards. And I just think, yeah, I think the future is community energy. I don't see it being anything other than community energy, which is great. So I think the difference before we with the Lawrence Western turbine was we just had so much to do to overcome from starting from scratch with no funding at all with 20 grand here and scratching around to do two turbines with a pipeline of 10 more. So I just think if we have that development finance, we can just go and make it happen. It only takes 6 months to do the foundations, 2 weeks to put the turbine up. We could be doing this if we're building the infrastructure, and we could build like a country again. I think that'd be a good start. So I think we've got the right government now that's backing it. We didn't have that before, and we've got the people that want to do it. So I think yeah, I think it's a matter of time now. The local power plan's been launched. Like you say, the details around how the money's going to work hasn't been done. But what I would say is, if you've gone to the We Want One site and you're interested in going to the next step, do get in touch with us because we've got a way of taking it from soup to nuts, basically from idea to actually installation. So I think that's a critical thing is yes, to get that initial interest locally, but actually it's getting that practical step, go through the practical process and making sure that practical process happens. So yeah.
Cool, thanks.
And,
Yeah, I
and yeah,
think
and
my
I would say,
there we go.
yeah, just to big up Private for a moment, actually, they came in at the right time for us because we had it a bit like Dave. We had a plan. We thought it was going to be a long-term PPA with a local authority, and that fell apart at the last minute, not through our own fault, not like Dave's situation. It's not his fault. It's basically stuff happens and the sands shift, and thankfully, Thrive, who understood the market and understood what we were about and what we are doing backed us, and that meant that we were able to get the project underway. So yeah, there's different routes. The sands will shift. I just say
Mhm.
keep going with it all, and it will happen. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Very honoured, very proud and honoured to be part of it. It was amazing.
can I just say that actually I think the biggest factor is the groups, the energy, the people to push these things through. It takes a lot of work. And the trouble is that people get very focused on their own project, and by the time that's built, they need a break, and they're not necessarily there to do the next one or the one after. So we need somehow to get more
Mm.
people involved. That's we can get the
Yeah.
money, we can get through planning, we can
Mhm.
we know how to do it, but we do need the sort of legs. So it can't, outside consultants can be very helpful, but you need people on the ground, people who are where it's their town, their village.
Mm.
They're going
Yeah.
to talk to landowners. They're going to talk to the council. You can't do it just coming in as outsiders.
I just want
And
to
just
echo what Dave's saying there briefly, and that's why it needs to be part of your funding model is to actually fund the groups. We funded the groups in
Yeah.
the local area that we've been talking about, so they've been part of the journey. And I think you're
Yeah.
absolutely right, Dave, building that into the capacity.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that democratic point is a great one to finish on. This really is about enabling every community to have the access to people and resources to do this and contribute everywhere to this kind of big national mission. I think we've gone past 2 o'clock. I'm afraid we're going to probably have to wrap things up there for today. But I'd like to thank all of our speakers and all of you for kind of staying and contributing to the discussions and attending. We'll email follow-up information for the working group. The slides and recordings will be up online very soon. And yeah, see our event web pages for future events in these series. We've got a little feedback survey for kind of evaluate kind of how today's gone. Like if we don't get to do it right now, we'll share that with email as well. So perfect. Thank you very much. Let's see some of those hearts just to close things out.